Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hardcore Finance Show with Alex and Shimon.
Hello, Shimon. It only took us about 45 minutes to get this whole setup right, but you know...
That's okay. We have our Hardcore Finance podcast Yeti mugs here and our cactuses that are dying slowly but surely.
But we can water them with the Yeti mug, maybe.
Maybe.
What a week. What a week.
What an intense week.
So what happened? Price stayed smooth at 50,000, and no country adopted it. No McDonald's has QR codes for Bitcoin.
Yeah, so it's pretty insane. So for those of you who have been living in a cave over the last week, El Salvador adopted Bitcoin as legal tender, which means that you can walk into a McDonald's or a Starbucks or a Burger King or any other store and just pay with Bitcoin. They literally give you a QR code that works over the Lightning Network. That's amazing.
Then Brian Armstrong decided to pick a fight with the SEC. That was interesting over Twitter. We won't necessarily comment that. We should talk about that. Just what does it mean? But what else happened?
And then the other thing is, as soon as El Salvador announced that they announced it 3 months ago, but basically as soon as the law went into effect, the price of Bitcoin crashed like crazy. I haven't seen such a candle. I think it was a $10,000 candle.
Which we were talking about the same day. We were saying, you know what? Wouldn't it be amazing? One day we'll see a $10,000 candle of Bitcoin. It will be nothing. And literally that same day, boom, $10,000.
So from 52,500 to 42,500 in a few hours.
No big deal. Then also, by the way, stats came out that NFTs, the NFT craze, down 80% from the peak on OpenSea volume. So we can talk about that, but should we start with the McDonald's?
Yeah, I mean, look, I personally think no matter what happens to the price in the short term, and actually no matter even how it turns out for El Salvador as a country, it's a huge milestone to be able to accept Bitcoin everywhere in a country by law. I think that's a pretty significant thing. I don't know. Some hardcore libertarians think it's bad because the government shouldn't mandate stuff. I'm not in that opinion because I think, look, the government has a limited, role to play in our lives, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And then this is specifically what they should do, which is just enable technological innovation, right? That is a technological innovation. The fact that I want people to understand the whole idea with the remittances. We had some professors from Johns Hopkins and stuff saying, oh, this is bullshit because when you have to withdraw the dollars from an ATM, the fees that the ATM charges you are the same or higher than what Western Union charges you, which is wrong on so many levels. So first of all, the main thing is closing the loop. So the main thing is me sending you a remittance and you not having to withdraw it from an ATM. The whole purpose of the law is that you do not have to withdraw the money from an ATM, but you can actually use your app balance to pay for everything in the country. Yeah. And what's cool is how El Salvador did it. They said, look, the person receiving the money doesn't even have to receive Bitcoin. They can just receive dollars.
Well, yeah, while you're talking, I just want to pull up a tweet that the Chivo wallet sent out. Have you seen this? Tweet?
Yeah, I love the social media people at El Salvador's government are amazing. I want to find people like them to work for me. Because, first of all, the president tweeted, I bought the dip, which is, by the way, with government money. He didn't mean I bought the dip with my personal funds. As the price crashed, which to me was amazing because everybody was like, oh no, will he be very worried that the price crashed? And then the second thing is Chivo wallet.
Yeah, so I can't find it, but so CNBC put out an article that says El Salvador's new Bitcoin wallets could cost Western Union $400 million per year. Now, again, the country has about 6.5 million people, okay? And for 6.5 million people, 400 million is a pretty substantial sum. Right, this is the what, more, 6-7 times more or less. $6-7 is $60-70 per person.
Which just tells me that MSNBC or CNBC messed up the math because I don't think the average El Salvadorian pays more than $10 per month in fees to Western Union. But
no, why? I think 400 right divided by call it 7 million. That's about $60 to $70 per person in fees
per month.
No.
Oh,
per year. So call
Guess who screwed the math?
Yes,
It wasn't CNBC.
It wasn't CNBC. The rough math is 30% go to fees, right? So call it 70 divided by 30%. So 70 times 3. So about $250 gets sent by a person per person, right? Back and forth.
Yeah.
That's believable per year, $200 per year. But $400 million for a country now, mind you, just for magnitude's sake, we have the president saying they're buying Bitcoin, and they bought 500 Bitcoin, which is, roughly $20-30 million worth of Bitcoin. So the country's holding 30 million treasury. Western Union fees alone are 400 million. That's 20x, with 15-20x what the country's holding. So it's a huge deal for their economy. It's a small country. Now, much bigger scale, it's going to be much bigger. And to your point about the misunderstanding about ATMs, exactly, the loop is closed, and you don't have to hold Bitcoin to pay. You get Bitcoin, instantaneously transfers to dollars if you want through the Chivo wallet, which is what they have. When you want to pay through dollars or Bitcoin, you can transfer back and forth for very nominal amount of fees. So you don't have to, it becomes a digital wallet for people who have never been banked before. How amazing is that?
Yeah, and also the misunderstanding is the fees are not the only cost. Like the cost, for example, is that you have to batch your remittance. So in order to avoid the fees, let's say somebody ideally would send $10 per day back to their family member in El Salvador. Now they have to wait for 10 days or something to send $100 because otherwise it's extremely expensive. Which means that the money isn't available as much as they can, and then there's also the transportation cost. I mean, I actually used Western Union once. I had to pay someone in Guatemala, and it was just so painful. They had to go to the supermarket and to withdraw it from Western Union, and like sometimes the number didn't match. It's just like such a bad user.
A paper form you have to fill out.
Yeah, you have to fill out. You have to give your ID. I mean, it's just like this whole thing.
It's amazing that in the 90s and 2000s, especially in business school, you had just-in-time inventory. This whole concept of, hey, let's become just-in-time, especially with the Japanese automakers coming to the U.S. and so on. Now we have just-in-time inventory of money. Money and capital is the same, capital and capital goods and inventory is very much the same thing. But now we're saying, oh my God, this is a great point. People don't think about this. You don't have to wait until the end of the month. You can just send it day by day. You have just-in-time money arriving to the family. And again, there's 30% or something, 25-30% of the GDP is remittances in Salvador. So this is a big deal for the country. It's a major, major deal, of which another, coincidentally, 30% or so they get to keep. And so it's it's a major deal. Plus the fact that you pointed this out before, and it would be good to comment on this, McDonald's and others, Starbucks, has to build infrastructure to accept Bitcoin in El Salvador, which by default means that they can scale that to other stores once that comes online in other countries.
Yeah, exactly. And people don't have to carry money. Like, there's just so many things. Like, some people, again, we look at it from our lens of, like, living in the U.S. where you have Venmo and everything. Like, just knowing how much money you have to carry with you throughout the day. I mean, I remember those days before we had credit cards, when I was living in Bulgaria. You had to, like, plan, and no ATMs and stuff.
Efectivo.
Yeah, you have to plan. What do I want to do today? Let me take. Now, I don't want to take too much money in case I get robbed. It's just like so much better.
That's the thing. I think as the younger generations are born with this, and they're born with two-factor authentication, and they have a secure phone, you no longer have to be worried about. So in Latin America, in a lot of these countries, it's not major crimes. I lived in Nicaragua. You lived in Guatemala. They're small crimes. Like, somebody, you get in a cab, especially as a non-local, somebody gets in the cab with you, they rob you of the money, it's petty cash, and then they leave. And this happens all the time. It just, these are less wealthy countries. You don't have to carry cash anymore. So the crime, like, people are going to steal phones, but if they can't get into the phone, if they can't get into the app, as long as it's secure, that I actually think it will bring security to people, will reduce some of this crime.
Yeah, and another use case that people are not thinking of, Alex, I don't remember if this happened to both of us together or was it just me when we were hiking in Guatemala?
Oh, it was both of us.
Yeah, so it's a great use case that happens
Tell
all the
the story.
time.
I think it's a good story.
So Alex and I are hiking up a mountain, and then suddenly a 70-year-old grandma with a big machete and a small child just block the path for us and say, you have to pay in order to pass. And then I was like, no, we don't have to pay. This is public land. And she's, dangling the machete and saying, I don't want no trouble. You have to pay. We don't want any trouble. And so then I did a cost-benefit calculation of like, I could clearly take on the grandma and the little kid, but with machete or without, but the village was close by. So they could like call for backup. So I decided to pay. So then I told the old lady, look, I have 20 quetzales, which is like $3.50. And she's like, okay. So I opened my wallet, give her the 20 quetzales. We passed through, and then she was
she saw the wallet. She saw
the wallet, and she was yelling at us, "Hey, you have more than 20 quetzales!" And so I turned around and said, I didn't say I only have 20 quetzales. I said I had 20, and we just kept going. So many of these problems can be solved, right? She could have just showed me a QR code, and I could have just paid her, or we could just avoid the whole situation by not carrying cash.
We have no quetzales. That'll be interesting. Robbing with QR codes. Give me your money. Here's my QR code on the phone. Wow. What are like? No, but I think it's good. It's obviously great for adoption. Ukraine came out with a law. They're starting to regulate and decriminalize owning and having Bitcoin. I think a lot of the countries that have progressive presidents. Ukraine is a very young progressive. Ironically, from Ukraine's SNL, he's like a skit artist president.
He played the president in SNL before.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's right. They were like, "Oh, this guy looks good." He has the. That's amazing. And then they were like, "He will definitely decriminalize cryptocurrency."
We can imagine him as well.
Literally on TV. So that happened. Look, I think a lot of interesting things are happening in the space, and the flush that happened in Bitcoin. I mean, it's just unfortunate. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but I'm going to be now. If there's a time to kill Bitcoin or to give it a hit, and you see on the media, I was watching Fox Business, and all these gray hairs are coming out and saying, wow, Salvador adopted it, and look what happened the day it crashed. But one guy was saying crashed by 20%. The Mexican peso crisis when it went down by 13%, and this is 20% in one day, and that was 13% over a week, and that was a fiasco. I think it's actually an attack. It's a coordinated attack because they saw leverage longs in the market and they cascaded it down.
Exactly. So first of all, I want to say it's so dishonest what people are doing, because when the Mexican peso crashed, I don't have any knowledge, but I bet you had currency controls that like forced you to hold the peso, that you couldn't hold all your money in dollars. And so the crash of the peso directly affects you. The way El Salvador set up this whole system is that you don't have to be exposed to the price of Bitcoin. The only exposure you have to the price of Bitcoin is the $30 airdrop that you get from the government.
Which you can convert.
First of all, you can convert it. Second of all, $30 just became like, $24, and they'll go back up. But this is free money that you got. It's not like... and then it's just people are so dishonest. Steve Hanke from Johns Hopkins published a pie chart of responses to a thing. Most people in El Salvador do not agree with the way this was rolled out. And by the way, what really pisses me off with media is when they lie, but not by saying something that's not true, but by saying something that gives you the wrong impression. I looked at the survey. It was a survey. They basically asked, do you approve of the government spending taxpayer money to fund Bitcoin adoption in the country? Yeah. That's very different from asking, like, are you for the law or against? Yeah. It was a separate decision, right? So I don't know why people are salty. I think it just goes against their narrative.
Because it goes against their narrative and they see it. And by the way, our listeners may not, or viewers may not know this, but before my current role, I was an executive at a market research company. We literally called the U.S. election on point. We have Dritan Nesho comes on our show quite often. He ran those polls, and I've been working with him up until this point for 4 years. The way you write these questions, it's very misleading biased question. As soon as you enter to use taxpayer money to do anything, unless it's a complete public handout, you're gonna get a negative bias to
They
it.
even use the verb gastar, which is not exactly to
cost.
use.
It's to cost.
It's to waste in a
Yeah,
sense.
exactly.
It's like instead of saying utilizar or like whatever, it's just like
these are biased.
Yeah.
It's clear bias. That's what I'm saying. That's why I think it's a coordinated attack. On the day that Salvador goes live, you have a huge flush in the market. Now look, the market was leveraged long. It could have happened, but literally on that day, just boom, somebody dumps. It started with somebody dumping 700 Bitcoin on spot. Basically, it means without limit order, so you're not setting a certain price, or OTC, over the counter, where you can lock in a certain price.
You just say sell it at any cost.
Sell it at any cost. It literally incentivizes prices to cascade down. And which is, okay. But by the way, when Tesla sold, however, I forgot, they bought $1.5 billion and they sold 300 million or whatever they sold in Bitcoin. They didn't sell it on a spot open market. You sell it on, OTC. You lock in the price. You lock in the price. Whereas this happens all the time.
Yeah.
The only reason you would sell a market spot order of $700 is to flush the market out, is to cascade and start something. And this order literally started doing it.
I mean, there could be other reasons, right? If you really need the money right now and you don't have the time to wait for the OTC to.
No, but you can layer it. No, what do you mean right now?
Yeah, you can layer it. I'm just saying it's definitely whoever did this was trying to crash the market. Now, I don't know if it's the government doing it. There were some conspiracy theories of the IMF, the bank. No, maybe it's just GameStop.
The president tweeted at the IMF, Bukele.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He tweeted. He's like, what? One tweet, it was on the 6th, flood is coming, watch out. On the 7th, he wrote, "Thank you at IMF. Now you saved us $1 million in paper. Now we can buy more Bitcoin." He tweeted at the IMF, actually, because the IMF was always against. To the IMF, this is an existential risk. If it works in Salvador, what the hell is the point of the IMF?
Yeah, I know. And the crazy thing is that the IMF was funded in order to promote economic development, right? It had a good cause. So many of these institutions start with a good cause. With the Federal Reserve, I don't buy all these gold bugs, the thesis that says, this was the way to enslave humanity. No, they had a bunch of banks collapse, right? And then they said, we'll have a central bank that will prevent the banks to collapse. But then slowly, the powerful people just took over these institutions, and that's what happened with the IMF. If people care about El Salvador, I don't understand why they would be against this law. If people just don't like Bitcoin because they think it uses energy, then of course they don't like the law.
There's something very interesting. You can have a position on something, right? You can say, I agree with Bitcoin, or I don't agree with Bitcoin. I don't think it's a promise, right? But to root for a people and a country to fail and for people to suffer is a whole different level. That is, and which is what's happening now. The IMF came out and said, well, we're not going to support you if this crashes, and so many others. So, let me bring this back to kind of common, to current news. And, these views are my own, but we have COVID, which disrupted the entire world, okay? Came out of China. Now we know it came out of the lab for whatever reason, negligence, it doesn't matter, but it came out of a lab in China. The Chinese government, for months, we know now, covered it up. So we're okay with not rooting against China when they disrupted the entire world perpetually, because this is going to be an endemic. But we're rooting against Salvador because they decided to adopt a slightly different currency and trying to, the magnitude, the audacity here is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything negative about China per se, because it could have been a mistake, and I don't think we should punish people if it's an honest mistake. But yeah, definitely don't root for people to suffer. I don't get it.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying we need to punish China necessarily. That's not the point of this going there. I'm just saying, look, call it an error, whatever, of global magnitudes, of millions of deaths, and we're okay with it, but we're not okay with a country choosing to adopt a different currency because it's their own internal politics? I don't understand. So since when are we rooting for people to suffer? This episode was brought to you by Caviar Gems, the world's most exquisite dehydrated caviar, used for cocktails, seasonings, and your favorite recipes. And also our partnership with Defiance Media, a 24/7 syndicated linear TV network that brings you all the latest in AI, robotics, blockchain, crypto, and anything innovation. Tune in.
Well, I think it's people are very cynical. So if you're powerful, right, you are powerful, and then I've heard a friend of mine that's in the whole kind of Middle East. He's following the Middle East stuff very closely. Like the same thing that happens in Afghanistan versus Pakistan. Afghanistan, the U.S. will do very harsh things. Pakistan, it's like, oh, they have nuclear weapons, so we can't like do anything to them. And there was a very good podcast about Bo Burnell or something.
Yeah.
The guy that
Who
deserted.
yeah.
He deserted his post, and they talk about how the government is very, very careful with dealing with Pakistan. So basically the idea is like, you want to be powerful. If you're small countries like El Salvador, you always get the short end of the stick. Not only did like the US and the USSR, by the way, I'm not saying it's only the US fault, but like both the superpowers were creating civil wars in Latin America. The USSR was supporting communists, the US was supporting the anti-communists, which were usually dictators, like right-wing, like bad people too. And like these people have suffered so much. What's the problem with letting them just enjoy an open monetary network that saves them remittance fees? I really don't get it, especially when it comes from professors. Like, if you're a professor, you should be looking for the truth. Like, you should be researching the data to find the truth. So what's your problem with like, because like you did, I think Steve Hanke, he stabilized Bulgaria after the USSR collapsed. He's all about currency boards. Like the way to deal with this is a currency board. It's like, okay, we have a better technology to replace the currency board.
It's like the way to spread knowledge is the written word. Okay, well now we have the internet. We don't need to use books anymore. There's a better way of spreading knowledge. You know what's interesting? It's like this whole rooting against people is just so. I don't know. It's kind of hitting me for some reason. It's just so terrible because why? Like, it's their internal politics. If it fails, let's say it fails. It fails. Right? Who are we to come out? The whole professor thing also reminds me of within the crypto world when Bitcoin maximalists. So there's Bitcoin maxis on the investment side, and then there's developer Bitcoin maxis. Okay, investment side, I sort of get it. All you do is just allocate money, and you're saying that I believe that the risk reward ratio for Bitcoin is better than shitcoins for them. Everything else being a shitcoin, right? But if you're a developer, okay, why would you root for another project to fail if there are developers there? They're not trying to build, like some people are definitely building shitcoins. But let's say an Ethereum, okay? I'm not even talking about Cardano or Polkadot or Solana. Ethereum. They're like, no, it's a shitcoin. These guys are shitcoiners. I hope it fails. You're a developer. They're developers. They're trying to code and build something interesting for the world. If it fails, it fails. Why root against them? It's such a or root for them failing. That cynicism, I really hate it.
I mean, I think it's a very good analogy, and it's exactly the same reasons. Like people who root for Ethereum, for example, me, right? I don't have any money currently invested in Ethereum, but I definitely don't want Ethereum to fail because I believe the narrative that like the more pieces provide value in the crypto network, the more people will come to the crypto network. However, some people disagree with me and they say, no, every dollar that's invested in Ethereum could have been invested in Bitcoin if Ethereum didn't exist, which means that Ethereum is an attack on Bitcoin.
Every dollar that could have been that was spent on Burger King could have been invested in McDonald's. Every dollar that could have been spent on Whole Foods could have been spent on McDonald's.
But it's not even that because Burger King and McDonald's are competing. It's even worse than that. It's like saying every dollar that could have been spent on conditioners could have been spent on shampoo.
Yeah,
it's like, no, you need both the shampoo and the conditioner. Like the fact is, if Ethereum develops something really, really cool, and then people, use it, then where will they store their value?
Yeah, of course.
Not in Ethereum. They'll store it in Bitcoin. So like you could speculate on one chain and store it in another chain, and then there's all these chains that make, cross-chain transactions and stuff like that. So I just want, or like in the days of the internet, it's like saying like, oh, we don't think that Yahoo should exist because like Google is better. It's like, no, Yahoo built, Yahoo Finance that to this day is used a lot, and it's a great service. And its search engine just was collapsed because Google was better. So I think Ethereum's monetary case, I really don't believe in it. I don't think that people will store their wealth in Ethereum. However, Ethereum's use case for like speculating on new tokens that do other things than store value, I have nothing against it, and I want everybody to succeed. Now, when they kind of piss me off when they say the ultra hard money or whatever, because like it's bullshit. It's not apples to apples. But I'm a free market guy. I want everybody to have a shot at succeeding.
Yeah, and then the irony is, again, that we kind of went down this path, but Bitcoin maxis, who are supposed to be libertarians, that's the killer part, right? They're such libertarians that they're actively trying to make other projects fail so that theirs wins. That's not the libertarian way. The libertarian way is let the competition decide who's going to win, not like purposely try to sabotage or root against other projects because they are against your thesis. That is not libertarian anymore. That is, I don't know, the dogmatic, or I don't know what you would call it, zealousy, zealotry. It's becoming this religion, if you will, right?
By the way, Goldbug's attacking Bitcoin, that I totally agree with. I mean, not agree with. I understand why they're doing it, because I think that gold's price is going to very, very close to zero, because Bitcoin is just a perfect, it's a better version than gold in every single dimension. Like you literally list all the features of gold, and Bitcoin does it better. So like I understand why those people are salty.
Wow.
What are we? I just want to say one thing, that I think the price crash is actually very healthy. I think it's very healthy because the whole idea is, I don't think it's good when people leverage too much, right? Anything that's not sustainable is not good, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's better for the price to go up slowly, but like in a stable way. I mean, it was clear when we went to like 65K, the only reason why I didn't like do anything or didn't sell is because like when you start going parabolic, you don't know how long it will last. So it could have gone up to like 200. Like if you think of the end of 2017, we went from like, I think 5,000 to 20,000 in a couple of days, which in percentage terms is like going from like 50,000 to 200,000. So I was thinking, oh, maybe it will, in a few days we'll be at 200,000. But like in retrospect, I think what happened with China is super, super bullish, just proving that you can move the hash rate, from one country to spread it out to many countries, and the price recovered after that. And now the price will recover. I have no question in my mind that the price will recover.
The question is when.
Yeah, the question is when.
Yeah, the question is when and whether we're going to hit another, few years of a bear market, which I hope not, but it is what it is. Until then, we'll continue building and building and working within our crypto space. But yeah, I will say this, and it's again a little bit off subject. One thing I've noticed coming into crypto, man, it's exhausting. Yeah, I'm tired. It's like a marathon run, like a sprint, and I've never really felt an industry, which is why I'm super bullish on it. I've never, and I wasn't in the .com era, but I've never felt an industry innovate and move as quickly as crypto does. It's almost, when I was starting at OKCoin, before I started, I was talking to protect the innocent, some partners at a crypto native VC fund, and she told me, she's like, I've been doing this for 10 years or 7 years, and I'm exhausted. And every year I ask myself, should I stay, should I not? I'm like, oh, come on, how exhausted can you be? It's fun, It's exhausting. I mean, there's so much that's going on, so many different projects that you have to be aware of, so many different chains, so many different, but it's okay. This is what a good industry should do. And in 2017, there were a lot of ICOs. It was just people kind of what we're seeing with NFTs now. People were doing ICOs. That bubble popped. The NFT bubble, as we talked about in the beginning, went to, it's down 80% from its highs on OpenSea, which is the biggest NFT marketplace. And it's okay, because this is always it's like a formation. It's like a big bang. Mm-hmm. It's all this gas out there, and that's starting to form to bring astrology into this. It's starting to form astronomy. I need sleep. I don't need. This is water, but I need coffee. This is bad. I had two pods of Nespresso already today, right before I came, and my eyes are just kind of. But anyway,
I have 5. That's my strategy.
5 then in the morning or throughout the day?
In the morning.
Wow, just like boom, 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 or all in one cup.
All in one cup.
Wow, and then you just.
Yeah.
Do you crash or does it?
Yes, but I crash late.
What time do you crash?
4 p.m.
So what time do you take the cups?
Like in the morning.
Wow. See, you heard it here first, guys. This is a hot tip. This is going to be at the end of our segment. For 5. Wow. Okay.
It's not proven to not be healthy for you.
So back to astronomy and astrology and palm readings. But basically, the space is blowing up and then it'll come down and the good things will kind of bubble up and we'll see. And by the way, on NFTs, we talked to make fun of it. Literally, as of a month and a half ago, you were saying, "Oh, haha, JPEGs and rocks." But now I showed you some metaverse projects, and you're like, I get NFTs. But this is how quickly it changes.
Exactly. And I actually wanted to spend some time talking about it. So I still think that the whole JPEGs and rocks thing, I personally don't believe in it. I don't get it not because I don't understand the technology. It's because I don't think it solves a pain point. Right? So our discussions about like selling a JPEG of a monkey is not whether the monkey is valuable or not. Like I'm all for art. If you can sell a banana taped to the wall for $120,000, who am I to sell?
You can sell a JPEG for 1.3 million.
Yeah.
No problem.
So that part I don't have a problem with. My biggest thing is like whether it's OpenSea or Christie's or any reputable place that will be a marketplace for the JPEGs, right? They can just have a centralized ledger of ownership. But then Alex showed me the extension of this, which is like, what if it's not just a rock? What if it's an in-game item? Now, I actually had thought of NFTs in 2018, I think. I was in some conferences in San Francisco. And I was like, look, okay, people say you have this sword, right? And you can kill people with it, but then you can transfer it to another game. I'm like, that's not exactly, I wasn't sold on the use case because this transfer it to another game means that the other game has to accept this sword, but what if the other person has a bazooka, right? So you can't accept anything. And that was my block. But now what's happening recently is like, it's not a specific game, it's more a metaverse. So it's more like for example, a game with many planets. In one planet, you can only fight with swords. In another planet, you can only fight with RPGs, and people can like vote on the rules of these planets. And then it becomes really interesting. Because then it's not like I need permission from a game developer to port my sword, in which case, what's the point of an NFT? It's like once we agree on the ground rules of the whole universe,
which
right?
you get to vote on,
which you get to, well, yeah, whatever. You can vote on I think you don't vote on the ground rules of the universe, you vote on localized rules.
Even sometimes some games in the universe, you have DAOs.
Yeah, exactly. So, and this reminds me of, I heard a fascinating podcast about like the maritime law, right? So maritime law is very interesting. So the sea is too big for any one nation to control. That's the pain point of that maritime law is supposed to solve. And then what happens is like, okay, if I'm Britain and I have the biggest fleet, let's say I pass a law that you cannot have whatever on your ships. And then if the British fleet comes to your ship, they find this thing, they can put you in jail. But like the British fleet can't enforce this all over the world. So then what happened is a bunch of countries just loosely, I don't know if it was even formal, but they came to these agreements like right of way, like two ships come to each other, like who gives right of way to whom? Nobody's enforcing it. No, seriously, I took a sailing course, so I know.
Red right return, you taught me.
Exactly, red right returning. When you return into the harbor, the red buoy has to be in your right. But no, my point is maritime law is basically like a convention that kind of everybody accepts. And then within that, if you're in the territorial waters of a specific country, then the laws of the country apply. What an amazing concept is this to port this into a metaverse. And then like, yeah, the metaverse rules is just maritime law. But then like each region can have its own rules, that can have its own monetary policy. And then the use case for the NFTs, not only is it portable, but now I'm understanding with the smart contract. So before, when I heard of NFTs, there was no link between the NFT and a smart contract. It was just like an object. That's it. What can you do with the object? You can kill people or whatever. But like with a smart contract, it becomes even more interesting because then you can say, look, within our planet in the metaverse, right, everybody who enters has to give 10% of their wealth to the planet, and in exchange, you can upgrade your weapons, whatever, right? That becomes then the weapon has to be an NFT because like that's how the smart contract can interact with it, and like you can verify what is their wealth. So that's kind of the moment that unlocked for me the understanding of like why NFTs are valuable.
I think the other use cases in addition to this is like you can rent your NFT.
Mm-hmm.
For me, what unlocked it is you can monetize time before you play FIFA. You play FIFA, okay, or you play Call of Duty. You and I, for many years, will play Call of Duty for hours.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and we got pretty good. We were pretty good. Imagine if we got paid for this.
Mm-hmm.
Not paying the game to play, you know, even outside of this grand vision which you have, which I think is a phenomenal vision and will happen sooner than people think.
Mm-hmm.
I think within 5 years we'll be living like Ready Player One style within the metaverse. But now we can get paid for this.
Mm-hmm.
How amazing is that? We're playing a game, we get paid instead of the game getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
And the better we are, then let's say we pass a certain level, we go down a certain quest, and now we can rent out our gun to someone else,
Mm-hmm.
do a smart contract, because they haven't played as much, and they're maybe not as good,
Mm-hmm.
right? That is so powerful. And by the way, when we talk about empowering people, let's bring this back to Salvador, and I think we should start, wrapping up the episode. But we talked about Bitcoin is enabling freedom, essentially, and wealth to people of Salvador, especially because they're unbanked. So is gaming. Salvador,
Mm-hmm.
Guatemala, Africa, Southeast Asia, India. There are kids everywhere now
Mm-hmm.
that have been gaming and have no chance in life because there's no ability to store their wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Now they can take that time that they've been gaming and monetize it. And for a kid in the middle of nowhere, Africa, or even El Salvador or Guatemala, people live on a couple $dollars a day. Okay, a day. Now you just went to, let's say, Axie Infinity and you made a couple $1,000, you're bringing back serious wealth. And in Salvador, you can bring it back. Now, Axie, in this case, it's an Ethereum, convert Ethereum to Bitcoin, Bitcoin to whatever. Now you're using it literally in McDonald's within minutes, right? You've been able to transfer wealth. That's what people don't get. There's no bank, there's no deposit, there's no wait. You gamed, you walked out of the game. By the time you walk to McDonald's, you can spend that money in and buy yourself a hamburger or buy yourself whatever it is that you need to buy. That is the next generation of the world. And this is why I'm so bullish on crypto. It's not just Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a settlement layer. There's going to be so much more beyond it.
Yeah, and speaking of the next generation, that's another thing that people don't understand that I heard on a podcast, which is like, imagine a world in which even if you study engineering in the university, you don't have a job afterwards. Like that's the situation in El Salvador.
In many countries.
And in many countries, but I'm speaking specifically of El Salvador. So like there's no prospects. The only prospect for you is to leave the country and send remittances back. That's like the dream. How fucked up is that? Now, instead, you have this whole Bitcoin community, the developers will be there, companies will be there, like all this activity will be there. And then people from a very young age can say, okay, maybe one day, see this Chivo wallet that I used to pay for my McDonald's, maybe I can develop on that because it's open source. That's the other thing. You don't even need permission to build a better wallet. And that part people don't understand, which is the hope that it gives to people. Like, I come from Israel. It's such a sad situation. You see Gaza versus the West Bank, and regardless of Israel's policies, which I really don't support, people in Gaza don't have hope, and people in the West Bank have hope. And then that's why you can see like a huge difference, even though it's the same people, right? So like I think giving people hope and giving people prospects for a better future is so important. And Steve Hanke, if you have a problem with that, then I really don't understand what you're all about.
Yeah, you should come on the show and talk to us, Steve, because you're rooting against people's prosperity. Whether you believe it will work or not, you and your currency boards can go. With that, we should end the episode before we go a little too crazy on our good old pal Steve.
Yep. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please keep sending us good ideas of what you would like us to discuss, and subscribe, like, tell your friends about us, and we'll
Go
see.
buy some Bitcoin, support Salvador.
Yeah, let's support El Salvador. This is not investment advice, though. And on that note, I hope everybody has a great week.
Good talk.
Good talk, Alex. See you later.
See you later.